60 miles off the New Jersey coast and 230 feet of black water, there's a German U-boat that, according to every official record, every government archive, every naval historian on the planet, shouldn't exist. For 50 years, three different governments, the United States, Britain, Germany, all agreed this submarine was sunk off the coast of Africa near Gibraltar, 5,000 miles away. The families were told their sons died near Africa, memorials were built, records were filed, case closed. Except in 1991, a fishing captain kept snagging his nets on something. And when divers finally went down to check what it was, they found a perfectly intact German submarine sitting upright on the seafloor. The hatches were closed, the conning tower was unmistakable, and it was 5,000 miles from where it was supposed to be. Three divers would die trying to figure out what happened. And what they eventually discovered inside that steel tomb, it's not just horrifying because of how these men died. It's horrifying because of how long it took them to die. And the fact that some of them knew in complete darkness exactly what was happening to them. Listen, I've covered a lot of dark stuff, but this one hits different. Because when you understand what actually happened in those final moments, when you realize that not everyone died instantly, when you piece together what the survivors in the aft compartment experienced, man, it changes how you think about submarine warfare entirely. The official story was wrong, the cause of death was wrong, the location was wrong, everything was wrong, and the truth is so much worse than enemy fire. Let me walk you through this because the details matter. Every single detail matters when you're talking about 56 men dying in ways that most people can't even imagine. So it's 1991, somewhere off the New Jersey coast. This fishing captain, he's been working these waters for years, knows every wreck, every reef, every spot where the fish run, and his nets keep getting snagged on something at the same coordinates. Not occasionally, consistently. He's losing gear, losing time, losing money. Word gets around the dive community because that's how it works, right? Someone finds something interesting, everyone wants to check it out. Bill Nagel hears about it. Nagel's not some weekend warrior. He's an elite wreck diver, knows these waters better than almost anyone. And 230 feet down, that's deep enough to kill you if you screw up, but it's shallow enough that it's technically reachable. So Nagel goes down, and he brings John Chatterton with him. Now, Chatterton, this guy's a legend in the technical diving world. He's the guy other divers call when they need someone who won't panic, who can handle the kind of depth and conditions that would make most people turn around. They descend into this freezing dark water. Visibility is basically zero, currents pushing them around, and then Chatterton's flashlight catches something. It's a conning tower. Distinctive design, German, unmistakably German. The hatches are closed. That's significant. It means the submarine went down sealed, not blown apart in combat. There's no visible breakup, no scattered debris field you'd expect from depth charges or aerial attack. This thing sank in one piece and settled on the bottom intact. Chatterton surfaces, and he's thinking, okay, this has to be documented somewhere. The U-boat war was the most extensively recorded naval campaign in history. Every boat, every patrol, every loss meticulously tracked by multiple governments. So he calls the U.S. Naval Historical Center, and they tell him he's wrong. Flat out, you're mistaken. It's not possible. There is no German U-boat in that location. Our records are complete. Every U-boat loss is accounted for. But Chatterton knows what he saw. The design is unmistakable. You can't confuse a German U-boat with anything else. The conning tower alone is distinctive enough. So now there's this impossible situation. Either Chatterton, one of the best wreck divers in the world, identified a submarine wrong, which is basically impossible, or the U.S. Navy, the British Admiralty, and the German Naval Archives have all been wrong for 50 years. They start calling it U-Hoo because nobody knows what else to call it. It's German, it's definitely a U-boat, and according to every official source, it doesn't exist. Think about that for a second. This isn't some ancient shipwreck from the 1800s where records are sketchy. This is World War II, modern era, documented obsessively, and somehow a 250-foot submarine with 56 men aboard managed to disappear from history completely. The dive team, they're hooked now. Someone's family deserves to know. Somewhere out there, 56 families were told their sons, their brothers, their fathers died in one place, and the truth is their bodies are somewhere completely different. That's not right. That's the kind of thing that eats at you. But here's where it gets dangerous. 230 feet is no joke. At that depth, nitrogen narcosis starts hitting you. Your brain basically gets drunk. You start making decisions that would seem insane on the surface, but down there in the moment, they make perfect sense. And that's how people die. The air consumption at that depth is brutal. Every breath you take uses exponentially more air than it would in shallow water. So you've got maybe 15, 20 minutes of usable bottom time before you have to start ascending. And if you go inside the wreck, you're navigating in pitch black, through jagged metal, collapsed compartments, with silt so thick that one wrong move creates an instant blackout. Touch anything, disturb any surface, and the visibility goes from bad to zero in seconds. And if you can't see, if you can't find your way back to the exit, you just became a permanent part of the wreck. December 19th, Chris Rouse and his son Chrissy Rouse, father and son dive team, both experienced, both respected in the community. They're not cowboys, they're careful, methodical, they know the risks. They descend together to the Yoo-hoo wreck. The plan is simple: get in, look for identifying marks, get out, but inside that submarine, everything goes wrong. The visibility is worse than expected. The nitrogen narcosis hits harder than anticipated. They penetrate deeper into the wreck than they planned, and time just slips away from you at that depth. What feels like 5 minutes might be 15, and 15 minutes at 230 feet might as well be a death sentence. They realize too late they've burned through too much air. Emergency ascent. They're coming up too fast, way too fast, but they don't have a choice. If they stay down, they drown. If they come up too fast, decompression sickness, the bends, can kill them just as dead. Chris dies on the boat. They're trying to recompress him, trying to save him, and he dies right there on deck. Chrissy makes it to the hospital. He dies a few hours later. The submarine claimed its first victims in 47 years, father and son gone trying to identify a boat that wasn't supposed to exist. The dive community is shaken. Some people say, stop, it's not worth it, leave it alone. But Chatterton, he can't let it go. He owes it to the Rouses. He owes it to whoever's inside that submarine. So the dives continue. Each expedition brings back small artifacts, buttons, tools, pieces of equipment, but nothing with a name, nothing with a serial number. And that's when they realized this was deliberate. German submarines, when they entered combat zones, especially near enemy coasts, they removed identifying marks, standard procedure. If the boat was captured, if it went down, the enemy couldn't easily identify it. The submarine was designed to die anonymously, and it almost worked. Steve Feldman, 1992, third fatality. Experienced technical diver, knew the risks, went in anyway. He gets tangled in debris inside the wreck. Equipment failure, panic, who knows exactly what happened, but he can't get free. And at that depth, with limited air, can't get free means you're dead. They recover his body days later, 3 men dead now, and the submarine still hasn't revealed its name. Families of the divers start asking, is this worth it? Is identifying this wreck worth more lives? And it's a fair question, but Chatterton and the team, they know something else. 56 German families never got real closure. Those families were told a lie. Their sons died somewhere completely different from where they think, and that deserves correction. Inside the wreck, what the divers are finding, it's unsettling. Human remains scattered throughout the submarine, bones mixed with silt, with debris, with the slow decay of 50 years underwater. But here's what's strange. No crew found at their duty stations. In most submarine wrecks, you find the crew where they worked, the men at the controls, the men at the torpedo tubes, the engineers by the engines. But in the Yoo-hoo wreck, the remains are scattered, mixed up, out of position. That suggests something violent, something that moved bodies around, displaced them. Every dive is the same brutal routine, 15 minutes of usable bottom time. Most of it spent just navigating to the wreck, getting inside, getting oriented, maybe 5 minutes actually searching, then the ascent, the decompression stops, the waiting to see if you bent yourself, if you're going to survive the dive. And in those 5 minutes inside, you're in complete darkness. Your light cuts through the water maybe 3-4 feet. The narrow passageways, the jagged metal everywhere, the silt waiting to blind you. One wrong turn and you're lost. One snagged hose and you're trapped. One moment of panic and you're the next body they have to recover. Chatterton starts examining the exterior damage carefully. There's a massive hole in the pressure hull right around the control room area, and the metal, it's torn inward. not crushed from outside pressure, not blown in from above, torn inward from an external impact. That damage pattern, it's not consistent with depth charges. Depth charges crush the hull. They don't puncture it like that. It's not consistent with aerial bombs either. Those would damage from above, from the deck. This damage is lateral from the side, and the metal is peeled inward like something hit it from outside with tremendous force. It's consistent with a torpedo impact. But here's the problem. No Allied attack was recorded anywhere near the New Jersey coast at any time that would match this submarine. The Allies had extensive records, convoy routes, patrol reports, attack logs. If they'd sunk a U-boat off New Jersey, it would be documented. So if it wasn't Allied forces, what torpedo hit this submarine? The answer is worse than anyone imagined, but it would take until 1997 to prove it. Chatterton recovers a knife. Sounds simple, right? But this knife has an engraving, a name, Hornberg. They run it through German naval records. Martin Hornberg, torpedo man assigned to U-8. That's the breakthrough. The wreck is officially identified, U-869, and now they can research the boat's history, the crew, the mission, and what they find rewrites everything. U-869 was a Type 1X C-40 long-range attack submarine, built in Bremen, commissioned January 9. The commander was Helmut Neuerberg, 29 years old. The crew was 56 men, average age about 20. Some teenagers, mix of veterans and guys on their first patrol. They'd trained for months before deployment. By late 1944, the U-boat war was basically a slaughterhouse. Of the roughly 40,000 men who served on U-boats during the war, 30,000 died. That's a 75% fatality rate. You had better odds storming a beach than you did inside a U-boat. The Allies had radar, sonar, long-range aircraft, escort carrier groups, and they'd broken the German codes. They knew where the U-boats were going before the U-boats did. Sending crews out on patrol by 1944 was borderline suicidal. Everyone knew it. The crews knew it. Command knew it. They went anyway. U-869 departed Kristiansand, Norway in November 1944. Orders: patrol the U.S. East Coast shipping lanes. Hunt targets of opportunity. Sink Allied vessels. Never return unless ordered. The submarine never came back, and post-war, when they were accounting for losses, the official record stated U-869 was sunk February 28, 1945, off Gibraltar, near Africa. Allied attack. The German archives agreed. The British Admiralty agreed. The families were notified their loved ones died near Africa, except the submarine was sitting off New Jersey, 5,000 miles from where it was supposed to be. So what actually happened, cross-referencing the German naval archives with the wreck location, it's clear U-869 followed its orders. It made it to the American coast, operated off New Jersey in late 1944, early 1945, successfully evaded every Allied defense, made it to the patrol zone completely undetected. The Allies never knew it was there. Every convoy that passed, every merchant ship, every warship, none of them detected the submarine lurking beneath them. U-869 was doing exactly what it was supposed to do, hunting, waiting for the perfect target. But something went catastrophically wrong, and it wasn't the enemy. German submarines by this point in the war were using acoustic homing torpedoes, revolutionary technology. These torpedoes, after you fired them, they'd track the loudest engine noise in the area. You didn't have to aim perfectly. The torpedo would find the target and home in on the sound. Incredible weapon, except it had a defect. The torpedoes could malfunction. They could circle back, and if they did, they'd home in on the loudest engine noise available, which was often the submarine that just fired them. German U-boat crews called them circle runners, and they were terrified of them. There are documented cases of U-boats destroyed by their own torpedoes. You fire the weapon, it's supposed to go find the enemy, and instead it comes back and kills you. The evidence from the U-869 wreck is clear. One of the torpedo tube doors is open. The boat fired a torpedo shortly before destruction. The damage pattern on the hull is consistent with the torpedo impact, and there's no record of any Allied attack. U-869 fired one of its own torpedoes. The torpedo malfunctioned, circled back, and hit the submarine's control room at full speed with 500 pounds of high explosive. There was no warning. Acoustic weapons are silent. The crew had no idea it was coming. 1 second they're hunting, waiting for the enemy. The next second their own weapon hits them and tears the submarine open. Now here's where this gets truly horrifying, because not everyone died instantly, and the ones who survived the initial explosion, what they experienced in the following hours, it's the stuff of nightmares. The torpedo hit the control room directly. 20 to 25 men in the forward section. Control room personnel at their duty stations. The torpedo men who just fired the weapon. 500 pounds of high explosive detonating inside a sealed pressure hull. The explosion propagates through the compartment in milliseconds. The pressure hull is torn open. Water rushes in at catastrophic pressure. For the men in the forward section, death was instantaneous. Severe trauma, catastrophic injuries. The lights went out and never came back on. They never knew what hit them. When divers found their remains years later, bones were scattered through the forward compartments, mixed with twisted metal and debris. These men didn't suffer. They died before their brains could process what was happening. For them, it was mercy. But submarines are designed with watertight compartments. That's basic survival design. If one section floods, you seal it off, save the rest of the boat. And U-869 had multiple watertight doors throughout the hull. When the explosion hit, the aft compartment crew heard it. They heard the blast, felt the shockwave, heard the forward compartments start flooding. And they did exactly what they were trained to do. They sealed the watertight doors. These are heavy steel doors with rubber gaskets and wheel locks. Once they're closed from inside, they're impossible to open from outside. It's designed that way. You isolate the damage, you save the submarine, you save the crew in the sealed sections. Except in this case, they just sealed their own tomb. 30 to 35 men now trapped in the aft compartments. Engine room personnel, electricians, damage control teams, and they can hear everything. They can hear the forward sections flooding. They can hear the groaning metal. They can hear the submarine starting to descend, and they know exactly what's happening. There's no one alive in the control room to steer the boat. The dive planes are jammed in descent position. The weight of the flooding forward compartments is pulling the bow down, and the submarine starts dropping toward the bottom uncontrolled. The men in the aft compartment, they feel the angle increasing. Equipment starts sliding forward. They're bracing against walls, holding on to anything fixed. The emergency lighting flickers, starts to die, and then it's pitch black. Complete darkness. The only sound is rushing water from the forward compartments, the creaking of the hull under stress. Some of them can still see the depth gauge by emergency light, and they're watching it tick past depths they know the hull wasn't designed for. 230 feet. The submarine hits the seafloor. The impact is violent, but the aft hull holds. It doesn't collapse. And for just a second, maybe there's hope. We survived. We're on the bottom, but we're alive. The hull held. And then reality sets in. They're sealed inside a steel tube at 230 feet depth. The forward section is flooded. The control room is destroyed. There's no communication equipment functional, no way to signal the surface, no way to tell anyone where they are. And even if they could, even if by some miracle they could get a message out, there's no rescue possible. In 1945, submarine rescue technology couldn't reach 230 feet. The equipment didn't exist, the techniques didn't exist. They were entombed in steel at the bottom of the ocean, and they were still breathing. The aft compartment was structurally intact after landing. The watertight doors had held, the section wasn't flooded, and critically there was still air, still breathable initially. Emergency procedures for a situation like this: preserve oxygen, limit movement, stay calm, conserve what you have, because help might be coming. Except everyone in that compartment knows help isn't coming. Some of them are veterans, multiple patrols. They understand exactly what this means. Some are teenagers on their first patrol, and they're learning in real time they're never going home. Time becomes the enemy now. Hours pass in complete darkness. The men are sitting in freezing water that's seeping in through minor leaks. They're sharing the remaining air. The temperature is dropping toward freezing, and everyone knows what comes next. Some of them pray. Some write final letters that will never be found, never be sent. Some scream. Some stay completely silent. Imagine knowing exactly how you're going to die. Imagine knowing it's going to take hours. Imagine complete darkness, freezing cold, and knowing absolutely no one is coming. The oxygen deprivation happens in stages. First come the headaches, the confusion. Your brain isn't getting enough oxygen. You start making mistakes. Thinking becomes difficult. Then extreme fatigue. You can't stay awake. Hallucinations start. Your body is shutting down, trying to conserve what oxygen remains. And the CO2 buildup accelerates everything. As they breathe, they're exhaling carbon dioxide into a sealed space. The CO2 levels rise. It becomes harder to breathe. The air feels thick, heavy. Every breath requires more effort. There's no violent end, no dramatic final moment, just a slow fade. One by one, they lose consciousness. And then suffocation. The submarine became a gas chamber, and 30 men suffocated together in the dark. When divers entered the off compartments years later, they found human remains near the sealed doors. Positions suggested the men had gathered there, probably trying to listen through the steel for rescue that never came. Some remains were found near the engine equipment. The engineers had stayed at their stations even after the explosion. Discipline held even in the final hours. Personal effects were found: wedding rings, photos, letters never sent because the radio was destroyed in the initial blast. These men died knowing their families would never know what happened, would never know where they were, would never have closure. The bones are scattered now. Decades of decay and water movement have disturbed them, but the positions where they were originally found tell the story. No crew at the escape hatches because they knew the depth made escape impossible. No evidence of panic or fighting. They died as submariners at their posts, following protocol. Even at the end, they were still a crew. That's what makes this horror pure. Not just that they died, but how they died. Knowing what was happening, feeling it happen over hours, in complete darkness, alone at the bottom of the ocean. 1997, the official records get amended. U-8069's location is corrected to the New Jersey coast. The cause of loss is corrected to torpedo malfunction. German naval archives are revised. British Admiralty records are updated. 50 years of history proven wrong with one wreck identification. But correcting paperwork doesn't correct what happened to 56 families who were lied to for half a century. These families were notified in 1997 that everything they'd been told was wrong, and the reactions varied dramatically. Some families were grateful. Finally, they know where their loved ones rest. They can visit the site, pay respects, have a location to mourn. After 50 years of the grave being in the wrong place, they finally have the truth. Other families were re-traumatized, because learning the truth meant learning how they died. And there's a difference between being told your father died in combat, quick, honorable, and being told your father suffocated over several hours in complete darkness at the bottom of the ocean. Control room families, their loved ones died instantly. That's relatively merciful. Aft compartment families, their loved ones suffered prolonged death, knew it was coming, had hours to think about it. That's devastating in a completely different way. Would you want to know? If it was your father, your brother, would you want to know he suffocated in darkness over several hours? Or would you prefer to believe he died instantly in combat? There's no right answer. Some families wanted every detail. Others wished they'd never learned the truth. Commander Neuerberg's brother visited the wreck site, stood on a boat above where the submarine rests, dropped flowers into the water. After 50 years, he finally had somewhere to mourn. That's something. After half a century of the grave being 5,000 miles away from where he thought, he finally knows where his brother died. The wreck itself is controversial. It's not fully protected as a war grave. Under U.S. law, artifacts have been removed during investigations. Human remains have been disturbed by divers, and there's an ongoing debate about what should be done. Some say leave it completely undisturbed. It's a grave, respect it, let it rest. Others say recover the remains, give them proper burial on land where families can visit. Still others argue preserve the evidence before the hull collapses completely, because eventually all of this will be lost. The hull is continuing to decay, saltwater corrosion, marine life, time. Eventually the wreck will collapse, the evidence will be scattered, and the physical testimony of what happened will be gone. Some families want remains recovered before that happens. Others believe the ocean is the appropriate grave for sailors. There's no consensus, there never will be. The dive community is split on the ethics, too. Some divers refuse to visit military wrecks out of respect. Others believe documentation serves history, that we owe it to the dead to record what happened. 3 divers died investigating this wreck: Chrissy Rouse, Steve Feldman. Were their deaths worth the identification? Depends who you ask. The families of the U-869 crew might say yes, their loved ones deserved correct records. The families of the divers might say no, no historical correction is worth more lives. But U-869's story teaches something beyond a single submarine tragedy. It represents the larger horror of the U-boat war. 30,000 German submariners died during World War II, most of them in circumstances similar to U-869, trapped, suffocating, knowing death was coming, unable to escape. This wasn't warriors dying in glorious combat. This was industrial-scale slaughter of young men in steel coffins. The average age was 20 years old. Teenagers, essentially, sent into machines that had a 75% fatality rate, and the technology that promised to protect them, it killed them. Acoustic torpedoes, supposed to be the ultimate weapon, instead killing their own crews. Watertight compartments designed to save lives, creating torture chambers. Communication equipment meant to call for rescue, destroyed in the initial attack. Every safety system became a death trap. There's modern relevance here, too. Technology still fails catastrophically. Military institutions still value speed over safety, still send young people to die in machines. The names change, the submarines become tanks, helicopters, ships. But the pattern remains. Institutions make decisions, young people pay the price. The wreck sits at 230 feet off New Jersey right now. The hull is slowly collapsing. Marine life has colonized the interior. Anemones, crabs, fish living in compartments where men died. The weapon of war is becoming an artificial reef, nature reclaiming what humans built to kill. Human remains are still inside, mixed with sediment, occasionally disturbed by current. The dive community generally respects the site now. After 3 deaths, fewer people visit. It's too dangerous, too haunting. The submarine killed its own crew It killed 3 divers in the 1990s, and it's still down there. Eventually, the hull will collapse completely. The evidence will be lost forever. But the story remains. 56 men who died 5,000 miles from where records said they would. 3 governments wrong for 50 years. Families lied to for half a century. And a truth so disturbing that when it finally came out, some people wished it had stayed buried. U-869 is not unique. Multiple U-boats have been found far from their official lost locations. Archives have been proven wrong repeatedly, which raises the question, how many others are out there? Hundreds of U-boats are still missing. They could be anywhere in the Atlantic, and the official records are now suspect. If 3 governments were wrong about U-869 for 50 years, what else are they wrong about? This is a pattern of institutional failure. Records filed incorrectly, sometimes politically, families given false closure, truth buried for decades, only revealed by accident. Submarine warfare is especially prone to lost boats because there are no witnesses when everyone dies. The ocean keeps secrets, and governments, they let it. They let it because correcting the record means admitting failure, means reopening wounds, means facing the families and saying we were wrong for 50 years. What U-869 reveals about warfare, it's not glory, not heroism, not noble sacrifice. It's young men dying in darkness, killed by their own weapons, families lied to by their governments, truth hidden for half a century. The real horror isn't how they died. The horror is their deaths were preventable, documented falsely, and forgotten deliberately. 56 men deserved better. They deserved accurate records. They deserved families knowing the truth. They deserved recognition of their actual location. Instead, they got 50 years of lies and a grave 5,000 miles from where anyone was looking. The 3 divers who died investigating Chrissy, Steve, they paid the ultimate price for historical truth. Whether it was worth it, that's not for me to say. But the U-869 crew finally has their identity, finally has correct history, finally has families who know where to mourn. The wreck is still there, still deteriorating. The story is still relevant because the pattern is still repeating. Somewhere in the Atlantic right now, there's probably another submarine that official records have in the wrong place. Another crew whose families don't know the truth. Another government error that will take decades to correct. The ocean gives up its secrets slowly, but when it does, the truth is always more disturbing than the lie. U-869 sits in darkness at 230 feet, 56 men still at their posts, still waiting for rescue that will never come. The eternal patrol continues, in darkness, in silence, in truth.